Hello, I'm Danielle from Pangolin Photo Safaris, and this is the Olympus E-M1X. I'm fortunate enough to have tested out the E-M1X recently, and in this video I'll be sharing my thoughts on the camera's build quality, the special features useful in wildlife photography, especially bird photography, autofocus capabilities, image quality, as well as practicality for real-life use. Most of you will know that I'm a Nikon shooter, but our guests arrive with pretty much every camera brand under the sun, including Olympus. And I've been curious to see what the E-M1X is all about, and that's why I've decided to do this real-life review of the E-M1X. Please note that it is not a paid promotion. So, here we go. The E-M1X is a 20.4 megapixel mirrorless camera with a 4/3 sensor. It's aimed at serious sports and wildlife photographers, and some of the important specifications of this camera are as follows. Firstly, the excellent in-body image stabilization, which I will be elaborating on a little bit later. Then the burst rate, or the frame advance rate. This camera shoots at 10 frames a second when using the mechanical shutter and up to 18 frames a second when using the electronic shutter. There's no way in which you're going to miss any part of the action scene with a burst rate such as this one. In an action-packed scene, 18 frames per second is more than enough, and I even found that 10 frames a second was more than enough to capture everything that happened during that scene. I shoot with a Nikon D850 normally, and I shoot without the battery grip at the moment, without the extra battery. So that means that unfortunately the frame rate is not so fast. So it was an absolute joy for me to be able to shoot at either 10 or 18 frames per second. It shoots full HD video at 4K and also slow-mo video in full HD. I won't be elaborating much on video as we are doing mostly a photographic review. It has 2 card slots, both for SD cards, and it is UHS 2 compatible. It comes in at a price of $3,000. I used it with a 300mm f4 lens as well as a 40 to 150mm f2.8 lens. Now remember, the crop factor of a 4/3 sensor is 2 times, it's twice. So therefore effective field of view of the 300 lens was 600mm and the other one was 80 to 300mm. The E-M1X is not replacing any other camera in the OMD range. It is making a branch of its own basically. It adds a bunch of features to the E-M1 Mark II. Firstly, better battery life. Secondly, improved autofocus. Third, in-body image stabilization. This camera has 5-axis in-body image stabilization and gives you up to 7 stops of stabilization. 7.5 if you use it with a stabilized lens. So what does it mean? It just means that you can shoot at much slower shutter speeds while hand holding the camera without getting any camera shake. This is really useful in wildlife when you're shooting in low light situations and you want to slow down your shutter speed slightly to save your ISO, so you can shoot at much lower ISOs if you're using a slower shutter speed. Obviously it is not applicable to fast moving subjects, so it doesn't really help if you can shoot at 1/50th of a second if there's a fast moving subject, but for stationary subjects it really saves your ISO, and it's an amazing stability system in this camera. Then they've also added a joystick, a multi-selector, to both the horizontal and the vertical orientations on the camera. Olympus has set themselves apart from their competition by including some really unique features in their cameras, of which high-res shot, live composite, pro capture mode and in-camera ND filter are all present in the E-M1X. Of these features, I find the Pro Capture mode and the built-in ND filter to be the most useful in wildlife photography. Let's talk about Pro Capture mode quickly. This is groundbreaking technology, especially when it comes to birds, according to me. What it means, it's better, in my opinion, it's better described as pre-capture mode. What it means, you're waiting for the bird to fly, and as long as you press your shutter button in halfway, the camera already starts recording shots. So you haven't pressed the shutter, but the camera already keeps a couple of shots, you can customize how many, a couple of shots in the buffer. Once you press the shutter, then the camera keeps all of the photos that you took after you press the shutter, and it gives you those that you took before even pressing the shutter, the ones that it saved for you. And that means that a bird taking off from a perch, you're never going to miss something like that, because it already shot before you even had a chance to press the shutter. So it makes up for someone who's maybe a little bit slow on pressing the shutter, which in bird photography happens a lot. So it's a groundbreaking technology, and it really changes, together with the fast frame advance rate, with a burst rate of 18 or 10, there's no way in which you're going to miss a bird taking off, a bird in flight. Then the live ND filter. It acts the same way as a filter would on your lens. It basically decreases the light coming into the camera and hitting the sensor. So why would you want to use a filter? Well, if you want to get creative in wildlife and you want to show movement, for example, you want to pan, then you're not able to do this in the middle of the day usually, because there's too much light. It doesn't matter how high your f-stop is, how low your ISO is. Often it's just overexposed when you want to pan at a 15th or a 25th of a second. The ND filter in the camera allows you to do this. So it shuts off light, allows you to shoot at a slower shutter speed. Also, when you want to show movement, for example, if one animal is standing still and the rest are moving around it, you need a slow shutter for that, and that you can do now while the light is quite bright. So it's for creative wildlife photography that I find it really useful. It does have its limitations, however. There is a limit to the shutter speeds that you can choose, but there are different gradients of the filter that you can choose, different levels of the ND filter in the camera that you can make use of. This camera body is an extremely highly rated, rugged magnesium alloy body. It is bigger than the normal mirrorless cameras that you'll find on the market at the moment, and that's because of the integrated vertical grip that they've added in the camera that makes it a little bit more bulky, but that also holds 2 extra batteries, so be grateful for that. So for those of you who have struggled with the small size of the average mirrorless camera, you'll really enjoy the E-M1X. What I love about the button layout is that it's exactly the same for all the important dials in horizontal as well as vertical orientation, so you can switch quickly between the two without any hassles. The controls are well spaced, something that those of you with larger hands will definitely appreciate. And then the articulating screen is especially useful in a mirrorless camera like this one, because the autofocus that you're using on the back screen is identical to shooting through the viewfinder, and that makes shooting off the back screen an absolute breeze, especially for those low angle shots. The camera does not have an AF on button, but the auto exposure lock button can be customized for back button users. The camera weighs just under 1 kilogram, which makes it pretty light for a body that's easy to hold like this, that's quite bulky. As for weatherproofing, this is where Olympus gets serious with the E-M1X. This body has extreme weatherproofing. So it's rated so that it can withstand 10 minutes of dripping water from above. I didn't test it myself, but there's plenty of videos on the internet that show it. So just make sure that the lens is also weather sealed. So it doesn't help that the body is and the lens is not. Not all lenses are. So make sure you do that before you leave it out in the rain. All in all, it's an excellent weatherproofed camera, and if you're planning to shoot in rain or in dust or any of the elements, then this camera will definitely serve its purpose. If you're enjoying the video, please remember to subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notifications about when our next videos are available to watch. The E-M1X has 121 autofocus points, of which all of them are cross type, which is great. They also cover a very large area of the viewfinder, which I find really helpful, and coming from DSLR, where you have limited autofocus points centered more around the middle, this is a joy to be able to focus right onto the edge of the frame. I found the autofocus to be very reliable and very customizable. It makes use of intelligent subject tracking autofocus, which means that you can set it in a certain mode to pick up either trains or planes or motor vehicles, or more importantly for us, birds. Now, I found the bird tracking to be extremely good at recognizing birds. It found a bird in the sky much faster than I would have found it using in control of my own focus point. So the recognition of the bird tracking is absolutely superb. Even a bird sitting on the edge of the water with a bunch of other birds, it did pick up all the birds despite not having enough or a lot of contrast to do so. I found it quite quite amazing that it picked up the bird. Sometimes it recognized the stone as well as a bird, but mostly it picked up all the birds in the scene. Note that it picks up all the birds in the scene and not only one specific bird. So that might be something that's going to be improved in the future. However, when the bird then flew off, especially fast, then unfortunately the bird tracking lost it. So when the bird flew off, or when it dipped from the sky in front of a busy background and the contrast was less with a flying bird, then unfortunately it jumped off of the bird and it didn't stick to it. So I found myself switching quickly to the normal just CAF, continuous autofocus, if it was a really important shot that I didn't want to miss and I didn't want the focus to jump off. They are improving this technology in leaps and bounds every day, so I'm looking forward to seeing how this bird tracking improves. It's amazing that it can recognize a bird already, but for now I'm trusting my own gut and my own skill to find the bird. Then on to CAF with tracking. This is a setting that's really appealing to wildlife photographers, because what it does is you lock on your focus to a subject, and then once it's found the subject, the camera takes over and the focus point follows your subject around. I found it to be extremely responsive. You can set the sensitivity and it actually does make a big difference. And it's so refreshing to find a camera that has responsive tracking. So it is extremely responsive. It moves around very quickly. However, unfortunately, it does jump off as well. So I found even on the least sensitive tracking setting that it did unfortunately jump off onto a branch or onto grass that moved, so it got distracted easily. It wasn't very sticky, unfortunately. And once again I found myself switching back to just normal CAF if it was an important shot that I wanted to get. I just quickly moved over to CAF without tracking and I followed it myself. If slow moving subjects fill your frame, yes, then the CAF with tracking will work really well. But then again, my reasoning is if it's a slow moving subject, then you might as well follow it just manually with your camera and your focus point that you are in control of. I do want to make a mention of the pinpoint autofocus area mode, the smallest area mode for autofocus that you get. It is extremely accurate. Many times I focused through grass, through twigs, and it never once had a problem with picking up the subject. And this is refreshing because this is something that I don't have on my D850, and it's definitely the best pinpoint autofocus that I've shot with on any camera. Normally the camera produces a 20.4 megapixel file, normal shooting, but it does have a high-res shot mode where you can produce a 50 megapixel raw file. Unfortunately, that's more applicable for stationary subjects because the camera uses a couple of shots to combine into one. But if you have a leopard sleeping up in the tree and it's completely stationary, then you can shoot it in high-res shot and you'll have a pretty good 50 megapixel high image quality file. As for ISO limitations, I started seeing noise at around 1600 to 2000 ISO in that range. I try to keep it below that in general. The sharpness definitely does decrease after that range, about above 2000 as you increase the ISO. It did, however, maintain the detail really well in shots taken at a lower ISO. As for the dynamic range, the E-M1X did well. It has an official dynamic range of 11 f-stops at the lowest ISO of 200, and then it declines to 10 f-stops at ISO 800 and less as you go up. In a high contrast scene, I want to be able to retrieve as much detail as possible in the shadows while I still see details in the highlights. As you can see here, I'm able to retrieve great detail in the shadows by pulling them up in Lightroom, bringing out the details in the swallow. This is the before and the after, and this is at ISO 320. Then having a look at this image, the same goes for this image. I'm able to pull out details in the dark bird while maintaining details in the highlights. However, it's shot at a higher ISO and the noise is definitely coming through when you open up the shadows there. But detail recovery, very good in my opinion, especially at a lower ISO. As for color rendition, I found the images to be very color accurate. In terms of real life use, it's super light. with the size and the weight of the lenses that you're going to use with the camera, together with a light camera body, it makes one-handed shooting doable. I actually tested it out and I could actually shoot just with one hand. Also, when you're driving in a vehicle and you have to quickly take it off your lap and shoot and put it back down, it's not bulky, it's not huge. It's actually great. Ergonomically, it is probably the best camera that I've held and worked with. The grip is extremely comfortable, vertically and horizontally, and ergonomically it definitely wins. So for portability and ergonomics, it scores super high. In terms of battery life, I did have to keep my eye on the battery. Even though it has 2 batteries, it still doesn't last as long as I'm used to with my DSLR batteries. Say after a session in the morning of 3 or 4 hours, then the one battery would have probably be drained and I'd be on the second battery already. So you would definitely have to charge during the day. If you have 2 sessions in a day, then you definitely would have to charge during the day, especially if you're making use of pro capture mode. That mode eats the battery really quickly. So keep that in mind if you're planning to be out in the field the whole day without being able to charge. Keep it in mind to have extra batteries with you. Then another note, the 18 frames a second or 10 frames a second really does eat memory quite quickly, as well as the pro capture mode, depending on how many shots you wanted to keep before. But keep in mind that you need a fast card to be able to match that 18 frames a second. So get the fastest card possible that you can, and also get quite a large memory card, because at a frame advance rate like that, plus if you're shooting on pro capture mode for birds, then your memory fills up really quickly. So large and fast cards is definitely a recommendation with this camera. As for the electronic viewfinder, it didn't show any blackouts while I was in burst mode, which was really great. I mean, for tracking a subject, that is just absolutely fantastic. You can see what you're doing the whole way through. What I did find bothered me a bit was the quality of the electronic viewfinder. There was quite a lag, and then also I found that the highlights were blown out. You can set the brightness of the EVF, but still I found that the highlights looked blown through the electronic viewfinder, but when I looked at the shot afterwards, they weren't blown at all. They were 100% fine. So that's something to note. It's something to get used to, but it is something that you have to take into consideration. The menu system is quite complex. I must say, you'll hear it often that the Olympus menu system is extensive and complicated. It's like going to Mac from Windows or to Windows from Mac. It's just something that you're going to have to get used to, but it is completely doable. And after a couple of days of exploring the menu system, it's completely fine. In conclusion, who is this camera for? If you are a serious wildlife photographer who prefers to travel light, you need a very reliable autofocus system, and you need the best weather sealing on the market in a camera body, then this camera is definitely for you. The fact that it has such great image stabilization and the gear is so light means that you can most likely leave your tripod at home, whereas you would have taken it along if you were using a different camera body. Also, if you are looking for a more sturdy and bulky camera that's not too heavy but still makes use of the mirrorless system, then this is your winner most definitely. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate the support on our videos. We hope to see you soon again in the next video. Until then, keep well and bye-bye.